Yes, hello, Dr. Lonsrich here. And actually, I see this is one. Your animal communication lecture. And so this is 2 days of lecture wrapped up into one slideshow. And I begin with my outline. One of the take-home messages from this lecture is that there are two systems of communication inside the body: endocrine system and the nervous system. And these are some of the things that you should know about them. There are a lot of other things too, which I'll talk about, um, but this is a nice summary of their structures and functions. Okay, so why do we care? Well, anything we do involves these systems: reproduce, walk, run, fly, run away, listen, smell, decide on going someplace. Endocrine system and nervous systems are involved. So we need to know a little bit about how they work. All right, so animal communication. This is another version of the slide that I began this slideshow with. And again, there are features here that are um, distinguishing the two systems. And we're going to start with molecules, and then we get to cells, and then we get to organs, and then we get to modes of action, and then we get to targets. These are all really important from my point of view, things you should know. And like the last test, this is open book, so you'll have access to this table to make sure you use it. We'll begin with the nervous system. All right, so the nervous system is made up of a system, right? And the system in the human body is composed of two units: the central nervous system and the peripheral nervous system. Central nervous system is the brain and the spinal cord, and the peripheral nervous system involves all the neurons that are being directed out of the spinal cord or the brain, and then or returning to the spinal cord or brain. Inside that peripheral nervous system, we usually think of two different subsystems, and I am interested in having you know these subsystems, but it's really probably better to talk about them as being subsystems of the entire larger system. There's this voluntary system, which is us controlling nerves, and that's usually by muscle contractions. But then there's also the involuntary part of the system, and that's being done all the time. Like diaphragm is helping us breathe, eyes are dilating when it's um, too bright, too dark, they open up. When it's too bright, they shut down, right? And that's all automatically controlled by the autonomic nervous system. I'm not interested in the rest of it. How nervous system signals work. Okay, so now we're starting to get down to the cells and to the molecules. And so we begin with the cells. The cell of a nerve in the nervous system, kind of a common, most important cell, we'll talk a little bit about in a minute. But that's called a neuron. Um, and then inside those neurons are chemicals, as you might suspect. And there are two kinds of signaling that are taking place in these, or between these cells. There's chemical signaling that is taking place between cells, and then there's electrical signaling that takes place within the cells. The chemicals that are communicating from one cell to another, or signaling from one cell to another, are called neurotransmitters, and we'll talk a little bit more about them in a moment. And that signaling takes place at a very specific location called a synapse. And then inside the cell, there are electrical signals that are using ions, not electrons, but ions like sodium and potassium. The two tie together. So electrical signals are generated to produce the chemical signal. The chemical signals are then going to trigger electrical signals in the downstream cell. So the way it works is you get electrical signal coming down here, causes neurotransmitters to be released. Neurotransmitters bind to these cells, then these cells produce electrical signal. So the back and forth between chemical and electrical signaling in this system. Here's the cell. This is a neuron. A nerve is not the same thing as a neuron. Nerves are, in fact, collections of neurons. So they're more like a tissue or an organ, if you want. You actually probably think of them as organs because they have connective tissue associated with them. There are features of the neuron that you should know. This is the axon, which is kind of a stereotypically long branch of a nerve cell. And that's where a very important electrical signal takes place. It's called an action potential. We will not talk about action potentials in this class. And this is where the connection takes place between this cell and another cell. And that's going to take place at a place called the synapse. Cell body